Back before I started YouTube, I was always so pissed off that no one made a top 10 gun list for Metal Gear Solid 4, because it just has so many. Then I became a YouTuber, I've done top 10 lists, I've done game reviews, and I started thinking about Metal Gear Solid 4 with a different mindset, and I realized, well, the reason no one's made a top 10 list for Metal Gear Solid 4 is that there aren't even 10 guns worth using. And based on the terminology I've used in the past, I started to realize that Metal Gear Solid 4 is neither a single-purpose gun game, nor is it a level-up gun game. Let me explain for those who haven't watched those videos. A good example of a level-up gun system would be in Far Cry 4. Let's take the SMG category. You start off with an SMG that does no damage, is small, hard to aim with, no range, really just a piece of crap. You progress a little further and you get something that's actually competent. When you unlock the MP5, you now have an accurate stealth tool. And once you get the Bison, you have it all. Damage, ammo capacity, stealth, and decent range. And that's how a level up weapon system works. You're constantly progressing and you're empowered by unlocking newer, better versions of guns that you started off with. The main pro to this system is obviously that sense of empowerment that the player gets, but a con is that you get a lot of wasted space and guns that really feel like they're in there just to piss you off and make you feel useless at the beginning. On the other hand, you have what I like to call single-purpose weapon system. A great example of this would be Halo 1. Now here we have the shotgun and the plasma pistol. Now, the plasma pistol is fantastic for taking out shielded enemies or mechanical beings. As you see, I'm about to use it here like that. On the other hand, the shotgun is great for taking out enemies that don't have shields. So by understanding the purpose that each of these weapons serve, you understand the sandbox, and that's what empowers you. Your own sense of being able to learn, adapt, and master these systems. A con of this is that you usually have less variety than in other games that feature weapons. Thing is, Metal Gear Solid 4 isn't either one of those. It's not like Snake starts with underpowered weapons and then gets better weapons as he goes on. If anything, he gets the best weapon right at the start. And it's not like each gun is there and serves its own familiar purpose. There's so many guns in there that do the same thing, it's just that some do them better. So there's just one dominant strategy and then other guns that you can pick if you want to have a harder time, I guess. If anything, Metal Gear Solid 4 reminds me of the Call of Duty series. There are many different assault rifles in Warzone, for example. However, everyone knows that the M4 and Grau are the best choices. If you were to pick the FAMAS or FAL, you know you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And this is kind of how Call of Duty works. It's not single purpose, neither is it level up. It's just guns are there for the reason of being there. And worse yet, some guns are there just to suck, like the SVD. And it's not like you have to use the SVD in the beginning to unlock the HDR or AX50. They're all available from the start. So the only reason you choose the SVD is if you want to have a hard time. And I hate that. It's just so much wasted space. Why is it even there? Which brings us back to Metal Gear Solid 4. There's so many rifles in that game. For example, you have the XM8, you have the FAL, so the SCAR, like really cool guns. However, there's no real reason to use them because the M4 does everything they do and it's suppressed. And you can put a decent scope on it. And then it pushes it even further because they have so many shotguns in the game, but why would I use those if I could use my suppressed M4 and stick a shotgun underneath it? Or better yet, why would I use any of the explosives in your game if I can just use the M4 and put a grenade launcher underneath it? There's no reason for such a wide variety of guns, as cool as it may seem upon first glance. And I'm not saying having such an overpowered weapon is necessarily a bad thing. You can do this. Just get rid of all that wasted space that no one's really gonna use. Have the M4 be your jack of all trades. You need an explosive, here you go, put it on your M4. You need a shotgun, put it on your M4. Then include a couple pistols, a sniper for really long distance shooting, maybe an LMG somewhere for boss fights and shit like that. There's ways to balance your game around having one centerpiece weapon. However, the way not to do it is to give us all these other choices that we wish we could use, but really feel like we're at a disadvantage if we try to. And it's not like this issue just applies to assault rifles. For snipers, for example, you have the M14. Why would I use the SVD, the Barrett, the railgun outside of boss fights when I can pretty much cheese the entire game, even the boss fights, with this fully automatic, suppressed, comes with a decent scope, overpowered beast if I pair it with night vision? Like, there's no reason to use anything else because the best option is so clear. In fact, I'd argue that the M14 is actually the best weapon in the game for its balance of range, stealth, damage, versatility, and the fact that all of your enemies carry scars, which means they're dropping 308. So you're constantly going to have ammunition for this rifle. Another weapon that you're incentivized to use because it's clearly the best choice would be the P90. Now, although you have the MP5 SD, which is permanently suppressed, which is very versatile and useful in a Metal Gear game, the P90 can be suppressed. Enemies are constantly carrying it, which means you're never going to run out of ammo, and the damage is actually competent, unlike the MP5. So because of that, the P90 is another go-to, even though there's like 17 different other SMGs in the game. And then the only pistol worth using is your Ruger Mark II Tranq Gun. It's permanently suppressed, you find ammo everywhere, you can buy it from Drebin for cheap, you get versatile ammo varieties that can cause your enemies to break into pits of rage and start attacking each other, putting them to sleep, whatever you want. Like the MK2 Hush Puppy here, I don't know if it's called a Hush Puppy, but the Tranq Gun is really the only usable pistol because every other pistol is either unsuppressed or doesn't do enough damage to your enemies. However, this one here allows you to remain under stealth and allows you to manipulate the battlefield. So all the other pistols are kind of rendered useless since there aren't a lot of situations where you have to shoot out a camera before you get rifles and stuff like that. So in reality, there's only a top 4 list that could be made for Metal Gear Solid 4, with 4th place going to the Mark II Tranq pistol, 3rd place going to the P90 for its high damage, stealth capacities, and combat versatility. The M4 takes 2nd place just because of its jack-of-all-trades versatility and how, if you use this, you can go through the entire game just using this gun. But then I gotta include the M14 as the best weapon in the game because it could do most of what the M4 can do with better range, and you pick up more ammo for it more often. Not to mention that it does crazy amounts of damage. Some runner-ups would probably be the Barrett and the MP5 SD, but then everything else you're just using because you want to use it, not because it has a place in the game, and not because it's useful. Now, before I even start talking about how to fix this mess of a weapon system, I gotta point out, why is Snake's signature sidearm the 1911? A big problem with Metal Gear Solid 4 is that it's way too Snake Eater centric. Now here's the thing, the 1911 had a presence in Snake Eater. I think the gun sucked ass, but you know what? It was Snake's signature gun. For Big Boss, that's iconic for him. However, Solid Snake has never been known to use the 1911. The SOCOM, USP in 45, has always been his signature pistol. I mean, if you want to say, oh yeah, but they want to make him feel classic because he's an old man and yada yada. Okay, well, his classic pistol, the first pistol he used in the original Metal Gear games, was the Beretta M92. So why the hell is he using the 1911? All of a sudden, it's a weapon that's inferior and doesn't suit his character at all. So the design of the weapons that are included in this game are just completely ridiculous. It feels like Kojima was just this is all cool. I saw this while I was playing Airsoft and just threw it in there. Oh, people like Snake Eater. I guess we better give him the 1911. It's just so dumb. Anyways, I'm done ranting. Let's talk about other Metal Gear games and how they handled their guns better than 4. Now, the first 3 Metal Gear games were amazing in the sense that they were simultaneously single-purpose systems while also being level-up systems. Let me explain. In Metal Gear Solid 1, you literally start with nothing. So when you find your pistol at the beginning, that's your utility weapon. That's if shit hits the fan, you use it. You find a suppressor and all of a sudden, okay, this is a stealth tool. Later on, in the warehouse area, which you'll be coming back to a lot, you get the FAMAS. Okay, that's a combat weapon. Later on, you have to go back to the warehouse because you need a sniper. Now you have a weapon for long-range scenarios. Later, you come back for the Nikita, then the Stinger. Metal Gear Solid 1 has one weapon for each role. However, as you progress through the game, you get those weapons because you need to fulfill those roles at a given point. So that's what I mean by it's single purpose and level up simultaneously. One gun, each roll. However, before you get to those rolls, those guns are kept away from you. So you have to work your way up, and it empowers you as you get those guns that now allow you to tackle those later on situations. Metal Gear Solid 2 continues these systems in a very similar way, except instead of having the basement warehouse, you constantly have to go to Strut F to pick up the guns that you need for the situations presented. You have that feeling of progression as your options keep opening up, but it's still single purpose. However, it does switch things up a little bit in a way that the previous Metal Gears did not. For example, this time around there's 2 different assault rifles you can rely on in combat situations. Now, although the M4, like Metal Gear Solid 4, is easily the superior combat rifle, the AK still has its place in the game. A, because you can suppress it, making it a sneaky kind of combat weapon. It's a little out there, however, the AK redeems itself because there's a whole section in Metal Gear Solid 2 where you need to disguise yourself as the enemy with that AK. So even though it may seem a little redundant at first, this whole niche of disguise and allowing a whole different kind of stealth to be in the game makes it worthwhile. Metal Gear Solid 2 also introduces a second pistol with the M9. Now, instead of just having the SOCOM, which is your combat/utility pistol for stealth and tight situations, you also have the alternative to put your enemies to sleep, which drastically changes the gameplay. So even though it's another pistol, it fulfills a totally different role. The same can be said for the snipers this time around. Not only do you have a PSG-1 for a long-range combat, but you also have a non-lethal version, which adds more challenge. Beyond that though, the rocket launchers and other utility weapons that are used to solve puzzles or go past certain boss fights are kept the same way as Metal Gear Solid 1. For example, the Nikita works the same, has a very similar puzzle you need to solve, so on and so forth. We also have the high-frequency blade, which was added in Metal Gear Solid 2 towards the end to mark the bombastic, big, close-quarters fight all the way at the end there. It has both lethal and non-lethal capabilities, making it a very interesting weapon in its own right. Although you don't use it for the majority of the game, it still has its purpose because it suits the tone of everything that's happening there, opens up a whole bunch of other combat strategies that you really need to survive in that area there, and leads into one of the coolest boss fights in all of Metal Gear. Metal Gear Solid 2 does slip up a little bit though with the RGB6, which really has no purpose. I mean, there's no puzzles that you need it for. In combat, it's more of a hindrance than anything else, so it's just kind of there to be there. I mean, if they wanted to add another weapon and still have it have some use, they probably should have put a shotgun in its place, but besides that, Metal Gear Solid 2 is pretty on point. While Metal Gear Solid 3 is still for the most part a single-purpose weapons game, this is the point in the series where they start shifting over to the level up system more and more. Let me explain. You still have your 2 pistols, one of them being your Tranq Gun and the other one being your utility gun, although this time around, the 1911, I can't even, I've gone in so many times how much I hate this gun. Compared to the USP, I wouldn't even call this a utility gun, but that's what it's supposed to do, so for now you still have your Tranq and you still have your utility pistol. But then when it really starts to feel like a level up system is when you get to the assault rifles. You get the AK-47 pretty early on, and it fulfills the same role that the M4 and FAMAS did in the previous 2 Metal Gears. It's your good old reliable, when you do get caught, this gun will serve you well. For boss fights, any straight on combat encounter, you can rely on the AK. Then later on you unlock the M16. Now this weapon is not by any means useless. If anything, it fulfills more the role that the 1911 was supposed to. It's your suppressible utility gun that you can use while you're sneaking and for combat. The M16 also pushes things a little further by giving you great range. So if anything, Metal Gear Solid 3 could have benefited from having the M16 take more of a center stage. It still can fulfill the same role as the AK, so it's a little redundant, but because it carves out its own niche well enough, it's still relevant and it still has a place. And the AK still has a place because it contains more ammo and still feels a little more suited to that close range raw combat. The point in which the game up and breaks itself and just becomes full on level up is when they include, or when you find, the Stoner M63 Lmg. This literally functions in the same way that your AK does, however it has more ammo and does more damage. So it completely replaces the AK. That's what I mean by it becomes level up, because you go from AK to M63. Similar to how in Far Cry you went from that shitty like SMG to the stronger SMG. Same thing here. This gun's presence kind of invalidates the AK, makes it seem like, okay, now that I have this, why would I ever use the AK again? And it doesn't bother me too much because you have to really go out of your way to find this gun. It's like in an optional area that you need to stealth around, so it's kind of like a bonus. So it doesn't piss me off that much, but Metal Gear Solid 3 does step off the trend of keeping things nice, straight to the point, no wasted space, with the inclusion of this gun. However, this isn't the worst sin that Metal Gear Solid 3 commits. The Scorpion SMG literally has no place in this game. It runs out of ammo too fast, works like the M63 but is nowhere near as powerful, and is just kind of there. Again, as like a bonus that you can easily miss, but still. Like, I think Kojima was thinking, oh, the enemies use the Scorpion, so you should be able to use the Scorpion, but like that doesn't really jive with gameplay because we don't really end up using the Scorpion. If they wanted to implement the Scorpion in a way that would actually give it a role, this should have been your like fully automatic stealth gun. Make the M16 more so like directed with long range combat, make it awkward to handle at closer ranges, not so much like the way they balance out the SVD, but similarly to that. But then give the Scorpion that close range room clearing role so that it has a purpose for being there and isn't just tacked on. Snake Eater really is where we see the bad habits of Metal Gear Solid 4 come into play. Although don't get me wrong, Snake Eater still does a lot of things much better than 4. Let me talk about what. Both the M16 and SVD fulfill similar roles to the M14 in Metal Gear Solid 4. However, because they're separate guns, they're a lot more balanced. You want that stealth gun for long range, you use the M16. When you want something that you're going to use for sniper scenarios, boss fights, or other utility roles, you rely on the SVD, and they balance this by having the SVD be a weapon that makes you immobile. You need to sit in place, plant yourself, make your move as a sniper. You can't just use it in every single role you want to, like the M14. Metal Gear Solid 3 also balances itself out nicely by having one determined shotgun. If you need close range combat, the M37 that you can pick up while you're in the cave section is your go-to gun. And there's no other gun that really fulfills the role similar to it. There's other guns for close range, but none that are as effective for when your back is completely up against the wall. Something that Metal Gear Solid 4 could use. Instead of having the M4 that can mount a shotgun, have a designated shotgun, or get rid of all those extra shotguns and just have the M4 designated shotgun be that shotgun role. Whatever option the developers want to take, just have a designated role for something. Whether it's the M4 just being the only gun that you go through, kind of like how Splinter Cell has the FN2000 that can like mount cameras on the wall, shoot out like sleeping gas, but is also like your stealthy assault rifle. The M4 could have been like that in Metal Gear Solid 4. Or let's say that Metal Gear Solid 4 doesn't want to have that one gun for the designated role that it's talking about. Let's say it wants to have 5 different shotguns and that M4 shotgun. A way that you could go about this is making the game a level up system. Kind of like how Metal Gear Solid 5 has tons of assault rifles, tons of shotguns, tons of snipers, and yeah, early game guns get like invalidated as you move forward. However, there's a role for everything at a given time because you need to develop those better guns. Metal Gear Solid 4, they're just there and then you can buy them, but in Metal Gear Solid 5, you develop them, so you get that progression over time instead of being like, I already have this, so why would I use anything else? Maybe lock off the M4 as like an endgame weapon that just has everything that you can like buy or develop towards the end. Just the way they have it right there at the beginning throws off the pacing entirely. So in short, pick one or pick the other. If you're going to do a more single purpose system, have the M4 and all these crazy guns be really good, keep them as the only guns in the game. Have them each fulfill a given niche, like in the original Halo. Or make it like Far Cry 4 and have a ton of guns in your game, but make a very clear progression structure with your guns. Start with the bad ones, get to the good ones later, so there's a feeling of reward. What you don't want is to throw in a ton of guns into your game like it's a level up system, but then treat it like a single purpose system by having those key guns that fulfill the roles the players are actually going to need. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Metal Gear Solid 4's gun problem. It can't make up its mind which system it wants to be, and because of that, it falls flat and overall gives you an unenjoyable shooting experience. And in an action stealth game, the shooting should be one of the best parts. That's all for me, guys. This has been Pliskin, over and out.